of stuff. In addition, this will begin in a second. In addition, wouldn't it be great to have some Israeli scholar come for not just a week where we end up, doing a million things all at once, but over the course of, the light is really bad on that. What's going on? Live controller, the light is really bad on that.
It's the eyes.
Thank you. Wouldn't it be amazing to have someone from Israel, a scholar, a teacher, a tour guide, or whatever, to come for like 3 months, to be able to slowly be able to do some real in-depth stuff?
Yes.
We'd probably have to bring the person, maybe the family, maybe the kids, find a place to live, and then whatever. But think about that, and then tell me how we can do that. Welcome, everybody. I'm Rabbi Paul Kipnis of Congregation Orami, one of the rabbis. I'm here. We just had a dinner with our alumni of the Israel and Italy and Eastern Europe trips that Rabbi Lana led for us over the years. And now they and others are here, both in person and via the live stream, to do a little learning about from Ukraine to Poland to India to Orami. Rabbi Lana was born in Moscow. Do you tell the stuff in your thing? Because it's for out there. Don't pay attention to that part. She's born in Moscow, made Aliyah when she was young, a licensed tour guide. Amazing tour guide, a master's in education, Jewish education from Spertus in Chicago area. She was recently ordained by the new rabbinic program. Were you the first class? Third class of at the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem, and is now studying also in Jerusalem at Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. She's being ordained in November. Anyone want to join me for a quick jaunt over to see her get ordained? We can talk about that. Maybe we'll go to Save a Child's Heart also. And she is here towards the end of this week with us to teach us. She'll go to the retreat on Saturday afternoon, Saturday morning, Shabbat morning, from 8:30 to 10. Who sets those times? She will be teaching a Torah study here. I think Donna Hennis is chanting Torah, and then we'll study. And it's I think the theme is, are the 10 Commandments still relevant? Question mark. Should be a great time. I give you Rabbi Lana, joined by our cantor's father, Doug Kotler. The joke, for those who don't know, is Cantor Doug is our cantor emeritus now, and we've hired his son, Cantor Kyle Kotler, to be our new cantor. By the way, he and I have been meeting every other week online. We already have Rosh Hashanah basically outlined. We're working on Yom Kippur next, and I'm having it's a joy working with soon to be our new cantor. And with that, I'm going to bring the microphone over to Rabbi Lana, and you'll go.
the next piece is Canterdag, who I'm convinced to join me musically, so thank you very much. Erev Tov, good evening, Shalom. I'll just say that I'm absolutely deeply moved that all of you are here and that I am here. And I cannot believe it's already Thursday. This week is going by too fast, and I'm having too much fun. And it's just a pure joy. I feel like you're my people, and that this is just home away from home. And it's very, 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 very special. I've been working as a tour educator for over 15 years, and I did not have this connection with any of the congregation that I've met over the years, and there were many of them. So this is really, really, really special, and I cherish that a lot. So thank you for being here today. So Rabbi Paul and I thought, where else haven't we gone together? Many places, clearly, of course, but we don't have all night. Well, I can stay all night with whoever wants to, but for most of us, time is limited, of course, and attention span is even more limited. So I choose 2 and a little bit, 2 and a quarter of the world, maybe to shed some light on something interesting and maybe unfamiliar for some of you or for a lot of you. And of course, again, in an hour and a little bit, there's no time to talk about everything there is to talk about any Jewish community in the world, definitely not 3. But it's a feel, it's something, it's a touch, something sort of to get us started and to have a little bit of a flavor. And some places are places that we're capable of getting on an airplane tomorrow morning and go visit, and other places are not as such. But either way, all of the places are filled with rich Jewish communities that have existed in those locations for many, 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 many centuries. And Canterdag will join me for some musical flavor of these countries, and we're just gonna dive in. The picture that I chose to put on the cover is actually something that I took, and I'm not as good of a photographer as Maury. So this is just from my phone, but I liked it. This is from Mumbai. This will be towards the end of our journey today. And it's called the Gate of India, which is a really fantastic landmark, sort of like the Brandenburger Tor in Berlin, or the Triumphal Arch on Champs-Élysées, or the Jaffa Gate in Jerusalem, if you will. So on this scale, and it's right on the shore of the Arabian Sea. And I was there for the first night of Hanukkah this year, just 2 months ago. And our fabulous Jewish local Indian tour guide, Joshua, decided that it will be a good idea to join the Chabad candlelighting at the Gate of India on the first night of Hanukkah. So I couldn't believe you don't have the sort of the perspective of the size because it's just a picture. But the Chanukiah that you can see was so huge. Actually, it was the same size as the one standing next to the Jaffa Gate in Jerusalem. And there were many, 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 many people, and the Chabad rabbi did the whole shebang. And the religious school that they have in Mumbai put up a show of the children, and they were selling latkes and donuts, go figure, halfway around the world. So we'll get to India at the end. There's something to looking forward to. But we'll start with something that, we thought that a lot of you maybe will be interested, and also a place that I think many of our ancestors are coming from, and that is Ukraine. I think it's a great title. I wasn't planning to put it on, but I was working on this presentation that it came up, and I thought that this is just absolutely perfect. If we look at history and we look at Ukraine and what does it represent and the Jewish history, Jews in Ukraine, it's complicated. I'm very much in agreement with that, so I thought it's going to be a good idea to start with that. A map of Ukraine, very simple. Everything that is yellowish is Ukraine, of the current borders, the country that changed hands multiple times over the course of history. And you can see that it has borders with many different countries. So Russia on the north and on the east, Belarus from the north, Poland northwest, Slovakia and Hungary on the west, Moldova towards the south, and also Romania, and of course on the very, very south, the Black Sea. This has always been an important fact that Ukraine has many borders with many different countries, but in the last year, of course, it became even more important, and we'll get there. This is sort of the same map, but just to have a little bit of impression on Jewish history. And I want to boldly say that Ukraine has one of the most important Jewish treasures that we have until this very day. If we talk about religious aspects, the beginning of the Hasidic movement, or the beginning of Zionism, or the beginning of Jewish culture, Jewish literature, Jewish painters, you name it, from the beginning of the 10th century, more or less, and all the way throughout, really, until today, we have it in Ukraine, and we have it all over Ukraine. Big names, big cities, big shtetls, big synagogues, big communities, and also big catastrophes. And that is why it's complicated. See, not only Israel is complicated. There are other places in the world that are complicated. Just a few names. How many of you think that your parents or grandparents or even further to the past came from Ukraine? Just look around the room, keep your hands up, look around the room. So names that, if your hands were in the air, probably you heard once or twice in the past. So Kiev, Zhytomyr, maybe Odessa, maybe Berdichev, just to get us acquainted with where we're at. We'll take a quick tour. Definitely not of all the Jewish locations that are in Ukraine, just again, a little bit. Kiev is the capital city of Ukraine. Kiev has close to 7 or 8 synagogues, used to at least. I think they're still there. This is one of the most beautiful. It's called Napadole. This is from the outside. I'm not sure I put the inside in. I didn't, but it's okay. We'll see another example. This is another one. Built by a Jewish guy who was very, very rich. He was in the sugar industry. His name was Brodsky. There used to be a time in history that the tea industry was Vysotsky, and the sugar industry was Brodsky, and Russia as a whole was of Trotsky. And you can hear how it rhymes. So it used to be like a thing to say, Россия Trotskого, Сахар Brodskого, Chai Vysotskого. I can do the same in English, but you can hear the music that the three of them rhyme. It was a thing. This is the inside of the Brodsky synagogue. We have some famous people coming from this part of the world. For example, Golda Meir was actually born in the city of Kiev. By the way, just an interesting fact. I'm sure you heard about the Pale of the Settlement, right? So Jewish people in that part of the world couldn't move freely as in many other places as well. And the Pale of the Settlement basically were 4 countries that were enclosed sort of in a virtual border where Jewish people could resign and they could not go further. For example, how many of you think that your parents and grandparents came from Russia? Raise your hand. Look around the room. This is amazing.
That's what they always said.
Right, that's what they said. But, newsflash, right, newsflash, no, that actually is not necessarily about the border. Jewish people could not be inside of Russia, proper Russia, until 1905. So most of you who think that your family came from Russia, they really came from Ukraine, Belarus, Lithuania, maybe Poland, maybe Moldova, maybe Romania. Very, very, very few people came to America from actually Russia because most of them left in the end of the 19th century. And Jewish people were not allowed to be in Russia back at that time. So Kiev actually is in Ukraine, but because it was a capital city, then Kiev was outside of the Pale of the Settlement. So Golda's family actually needed to get a special permit to get into the city, and that was because of the craft of the profession that her father was doing. So she was actually born in Kiev, and she writes in her diary, which became later on her autobiography called My Life, that her family was very, very, very poor, and also not with the best of luck, very, very unfortunate tragedies. Many children that were born to her parents and just died one after the other. And eventually it was her and her sister that remained alive. Her father immigrated to America a little bit before her. He settled up in Milwaukee, and he sort of got it up an apartment and got a place to work and settled in, and then brought his wife and the 2 daughters. So from the age of 8, she immigrated to America, and she grew up in Milwaukee and was the first person in her family to graduate high school, and was Zionist from very early on, and married at a very young age, and announced to the husband that America is not home, they're going to Palestine. And very early on, in her early 20s, she landed in Israel, and of course was very, very, very influential into building the Jewish state. I'll maybe just say one anecdote. 1948, right after the Declaration of Independence, so 75 years ago, literally at the end of the declaration, Ben Gurion said somebody needs to go to America to collect money because we're going to have a war and we have no money, no weapon. How are we going to do this thing? And he wanted to go on himself. And Golda, who grew up in America and spoke fluent English and was very much acquainted with the Jewish community in North America, told him, I'm going to go. You are needed here, and I know the people, so I need to go. So half an hour they went back and forth. It was not possible to win an argument with Golda, according to what everybody say. David Ben Gurion used to say about her, I have one man in my government. The name is Golda Meir. I'm not sure that nowadays in the Me Too age it will be such a compliment, but at the time, go figure. But anyway, at the end of the argument, he gave her a $10 coin and a coat, and he told her, you need to go now. You don't even have time to go home and say goodbye to your children. And she understood, and she went, and she landed in New York City, and she went through customs, and she needed to fill some paperwork, and then they asked a few questions, and they asked her, Miss, do you have anything to declare? And she says, yes, I have $10. And they ask her, where do you think you're going? This is not Kansas here, $10. What are you going to do with $10? You're not going to survive. And she said, don't worry, I have good friends, just let me in. I guess she was very persuasive. She spent 6 weeks. 6 weeks when she went from one Jewish community to the other. She had 3 different speeches every single day. At the end of the 6 weeks, she's going back to Israel, bringing $50 million. Wow. With which money it was possible to purchase weapons from the only country that was willing to sell at the time, which was Czechoslovakia. And eventually, you know how that war ended. And David Ben Gurion told her, one day, the entire world will know that once upon a time, there was one woman that made the Jewish state possible. And the woman was Golda Meir, that was born in the city of Kiev, the capital city of Ukraine. We also have some darker moments in the history of Ukraine. One of the darkest ones is, of course, the Shoah, the Holocaust. I was talking to Cantor Doug earlier, and I'll repeat it for the sake of just being sort of on the same page of history. We know that World War II started on September 1st, 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. And for 2 years, there were all kinds of different terrible things going on in Europe, but there were not a mass planned murder of our people. There were ghettos, there were humiliations, there were random murders of the street, there was dying out of hunger and fatigue and terrible conditions and, of course, all of that. But they were not yet have mass planned extermination of a particular group of people, definitely not of our group of people. And the massive extermination of our people starts on Soviet soil. In June 1941, when Nazi Germany abandoned its agreement with Soviet Union and over what's called Operation Barbarossa, entered Soviet Union. And it was going on sort of in 2 levels. The army, the SS officers were going in first and just cleaning up the entrance. And behind them, there were what we call the Einsatzgruppen, which are groups of people that were civilians that were trained for one particular goal. And that goal was to kill Jewish people. And there were 4 of them. Each group had a different region. So the first group went to the Baltic countries, second group to Belarus. Third group is called Einsatzgruppen C, went to the Ukraine, and D went to Russia. And they need to have a lot of collaboration with the local population. There was no way to do everything that they did if they did not have working hands and working eyes and ears and hands on the ground. So in every of these countries that I just mentioned, there were a lot of people, local people, that were helping. When we talk about Ukraine and we talk about Kiev, then the most famous location from the mass murder is Babi Yar, which possibly back then was sort of at the outskirts of the city, but today it's the very, very, very center, just behind the Brodsky Synagogue. Today, by the way, it looks like Central Park in New York. I don't know enough parks in Los Angeles yet, so I compare to what I know. We'll need to take care of that next time I come. Really, it looks like a beautiful, beautiful park. Just can imagine, women going there with children and couples and people with animals, whatnot. But it used to be the area where 33,000 people were shot dead over the course of 24 hours of Yom Kippur, intentionally, on September 28th, 29th, 1941. And altogether, in Ukraine and the neighboring countries, the Nazis assassinated 1 million people between the summer of 41 and December 41, or actually January 42, which is the Wannsee Conference, and they had a lot of help on the ground. So when we say it's complicated, it has some historic roots to the complications. And of course, I think today we all need to go through some sort of a process with ourselves and with history and with the present to understand possibly that the people that live there today are not the people that lived there 3 generations ago, same as in Germany and in other places. But it is definitely complicated. For many, many years under Soviet Union, there were a lot of sculptures and memorials inside of Babi Yar, because really it's a huge, 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 vast park. And none of the memorials did not say the word Jews. None. All of the memorials said Soviet citizens, because that was the Soviet Communist Empire. About 20 years ago, the Jewish community put up this menorah. By the way, the word Jewish still doesn't appear until today. But we have the menorah so people can identify that it belongs to the Jewish community. All right, we'll continue a little bit further with our travel. Shargorod, a tiny little shtetl. My grandmother, who passed away this year at the age of 97, was born in Shargorod. And this is a synagogue that was there for hundreds of years, and it's still standing until today, where at least it was standing up until a year ago. I'm not sure about now, but up until before the war, it was standing, not used as a synagogue. There are no Jews living there today. But most of the synagogues that were built in the Ukraine in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, and so on, are standing. A lot of them during Soviet time were used either as cinemas for movies, or as gyms, or as just sports sort of places. After the fall of Soviet Union, when Ukraine sort of regained its national consensus and building up its own identity, there was a lot of freedom basically for different religious groups to build up their own identity. Some of these buildings became synagogues again, and a lot of them remained in their secondary use. So Shargorod, as far as I know, did not turn to be a synagogue again. Berdichev, if Shargorod is a little shtetl, Berdichev at certain points was the big city of the region. Both of them are inside a pale of the settlement. I have a fun story to tell you about Shargorod and Berdichev. My great-grandfather, once upon a time, wanted to say Mazal Tov for the Tsar's birthday. True story, by the way. So he wrote a postcard to the Tsar saying, "Happy birthday, Tsar," and sent it. And what do you know? Several months later, it was in Shargorod, in the shtetl. He gets a knock on the door, and there's somebody who was an emissary of the Tsar at the door, telling him, "You are Mr. Knellerman?" He said, "Yes, I am. Who are you?" He's like, "I came because the Tsar sent me to say thank you to you for sending a birthday card. And also to see if, because you were so kind, if there's something that maybe the Tsar can do for you." So he said, "Well, actually, if you're asking, I would like to live in the big city." And he asked him, "And which city do you have in mind?" And he says, "The neighboring one, the closest one to here, Berdichev." So the emissary said, "I will look into that and we will get back to you." True story. And several months later, of course, no phone call and no postcard and no nothing. But the wife of the Tsar, the Tsarina, had a birthday. So my great-grandfather sat down and wrote another postcard and said, Mazal Tov, Yom Holedet Sameach, and sent it again. Several months later, the same emissary came back, knocked on the door, and said, I came to say thank you again for congratulating the Tsarina for her birthday. Maybe there is something that you would like to have from the Tsar. So he says, yes, I have the same request. It's like meeting the genie, right? I would like to live in a big city, and I still would like to move to Berdichev. So if there's something you can do in order to help me do that, it will be great. He says, okay, I understand better now. Let me look into that. And after several months, he received a letter. And the letter said that Mr. Knellerman, you and your entire family are invited to leave the shtetl and to move to Berdichev, as they did. And that was the big city. And it was a big, very important city Jewishly, because one of the most important rabbis of the time, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak from Berdichev, was living in the town, praying in this synagogue. When he died, he was buried at the Jewish cemetery in Berdichev, which is one of the most fascinating Jewish cemeteries that exist in the world until today. And the reason is in the picture from the left. So from the right, you have sort of regular-looking matzevot, right? And then the ohel, the tent where the rabbi is buried. But the graves on the left, and this is how most of the graves look like, what do they remind you? No. These are actually boots. Yeah, just look about it like this. And why? And they're all pointing towards the ohel, towards where the tzaddik is buried. And all of them are pointing towards Jerusalem. And the concept of revival, afterlife, was a big deal. And they wanted to be ready for when the Messiah will come. They will already have the boots, so that it will be easier to stand up. True story. The entire cemetery looks like that. You're not going to find anything like that anywhere else in the world. I've seen it with my own eyes. Absolutely amazing. And then another very, very famous landmark is a little shtetl called Mezhibush. It's in a beautiful location right in the center of Ukraine, in a forest. And inside of a forest, there was a tiny little Beit Midrash, little sanctuary. And inside that little sanctuary lived this gentleman who today we know as the Baal Shem Tov, who was the founder of the Hasidic movement. He was also buried in Mezhibush, so we can see also his cemetery and how it looks like. And one of the things that he was famous for is going to the forest and spending time in search for God. And while he did that, they tell about him that he was singing. What was he singing? He was singing melodies without words. Nowadays we call them nigunim. So I thought we might try singing together one of the most famous nigunim that even got to be called after him. It actually is called Nigun HaBa'al Shem Tov. Like any good nigun, it doesn't have a word, so it's la la la, so please cooperate. And it has 3 parts, A, B, and C. So we'll start and hopefully you'll pick it up. It's not difficult, and the melody is absolutely beautiful. So you are willing to try it together? Yeah. start from the beginning. The Baal Shem Tov had children and grandchildren who also became big tzaddiks. And then his great-grandchild became one of the famous ones, Rabbi Nachman from Breslau, who is buried in a place called Uman in Ukraine. This is how Uman looks like on Rosh Hashanah, because Rabbi Nachman passed away on Rosh Hashanah. And that's probably the most famous yard site in the entire world. Thousands of Hasidim are coming from all over the world, from here, from Israel, to be close to where the tzaddik is buried, where Rabbi Nachman is buried, on Rosh Hashanah. By the way, even during COVID, they allowed people to go, which was complete insanity. Now, by the way, if I turn to this picture, you're not necessarily going to know where it is, right? I mean, this can be anywhere in the world. But then, when I turn to here, and you can see the nature and the beautiful lake, and there's this beautiful park in the middle of the city called Sofievka. So this is Rosh Hashanah in Uman. People say it's a very ecstatic experience. So maybe one day, when the world will be a better place and more peaceful, we'll be able to experience that also. And of course, we cannot leave Ukraine without Odessa. Odessa is the very, very south of Ukraine, on the shore of the Black Sea. Odessa used to be called the Gate to Zion. It was from Odessa, from the port of Odessa to the port of Jaffa. In the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, all the big names that we know today. Shalom Aleichem, you read Shalom Aleichem? From Odessa. Chaim Nachman Bialik, who became the national poet of Tel Aviv in the 1920s, came from Odessa. Many spiritual leaders. The first office of the Jewish Agency for Israel, Odessa. People like Usishkin, Rupin, all came from Odessa. And of course also all kind of famous rabbis. These are very, very, very famous steps leading to the center of Odessa. Very famous opera house, which, by the way, was blown up last year or this recent year in the middle of the war. And this is sort of an impression from an art book, but it's very, very real, and it's the street sign saying Ulica Yevreiska, which means the street of the Jews. And it was actually not an insult, because there was a full quarter of Jews. And because it was a port town, there were many, many people from different places. So at a certain point, the entire city was split up to different quarters. And the Jews have their own quarter with all the establishments and the synagogues and the butcher and everything. And this is just a glimpse of the port. I'm not sure what remained from Odessa today, but it truly used to be one of the most important cities in the country, and also Jewishly. A lot of important people came from Odessa. This is, of course, a picture from recent events. Many people protesting. Ukrainians will resist, and you can see the flags. I will just say that Ukraine, of course, was part of the Soviet Union for a good chunk of time of the 20th century, between 1917, the revolution, until 1991, the collapse of the Soviet Union, together with 14 other countries. The main language that was spoken during that time was the Russian language. The main culture that was on the educational curriculum was the Russian culture. And after 1991, what happened to many of the countries is that they started to look for their own identity, their own national identity. And that, of course, came through language. Having said that, Ukraine is sort of, it has two big parts. It has the East and the West. The East, the one is closer to Russia, is very Russian in terms of culture and identity. They only speak Russian there. Until today, by the way, Ukrainians in the eastern part of Ukraine don't speak Ukrainian language. On the western side, however, the story is completely different. It's very nationalistic. They really worked hard to own their identity. They only speak Ukrainian. The young people sometimes don't even speak Russian. And their nationalism also comes in a way that they are anti everything else. So just as an example, I used to spend a lot of time in Ukraine as a tour guide and took a lot of youth to see Jewish life in Ukraine. And for the first time in my life physically that I experienced anti-Semitism was at the age of 27 in western areas of Ukraine, when I literally walked on the streets and there were other people chasing after me and calling me a filthy Jew, and what are you Jews doing here? Haven't we killed you all? And stuff like that. Clearly, it's not everybody, but it definitely exists. And that is also the result of fundamental nationalism. And it's not only against the Jews, it really is against everybody. And that's what basically they were doing in order to strengthen their own identity. So again, as I started, it is complicated. And just to give you an example about the languages, the Prime Minister, Vladimir Zelensky, I think it's not news for you that he is a Jewish guy, very young, he's 45 years old. He is coming from the eastern part of Ukraine, which means from the more Russian culture area. He was a comedian, he became prime minister several years ago. Before he became prime minister, he did not speak a word of Ukrainian. I have a friend who was actually ordained as a rabbi in Berlin several months ago that grew up in the same neighborhood as Vladimir Zelensky. He's a couple years younger than him. So he told me this the story last year. I was completely blown away. By the way, the languages are very different. I speak fluent Russian, and I would not understand Ukrainian. I will understand separate words, but I will definitely not understand a sentence put together. Now, if you noticed, when he appears on the media or television or whatnot, which language does he speak? Ukrainian. I mean, internationally he speaks English, but in front of, he speaks, and actually even internationally very often, for example, some point along the way, he wanted to address the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, and was a whole ordeal, yes, no, yes, no. Eventually, he was on Zoom, and they did not want to show it inside the Knesset. It was a whole story behind it. I don't need to go into those details now, but there was a huge screen put up on the Habima Square in the city of Tel Aviv, and it was also broadcast sort of live. I mean, it's not really live, but you know, at the same time, in the news and so on. And basically, he addressed the Israeli parliament. And which language did he speak? Ukrainian. It was simultaneously translated to Hebrew and, of course, to English and many other languages. So where did he get it from? Only 2 years earlier, he became prime minister, and he did not know a word of the language. But because he became a prime minister, then he figured it's important. So he took a private tutor. And he took a private tutor that, I guess he was very good, that now he doesn't say a word in Russian, and of course now it has a very, very meaningful, but such a surprise to people, just to say that when he was having the speech, my mother was visiting us, and we were watching it together. At a certain point, she turns to me and she says, I don't understand, why is he speaking in Ukrainian? Hello? But anyway, it's just an interesting story that, you know, we don't really think of.
Would it be hard to pick up, if you're Russian speaking, to pick it up, though?
You will pick up just certain words, but...
If you tried to learn it, is it an easy...
Yeah. I mean, it's the same family of languages. It's Slavic. It uses the same alphabet, but they have a few different letters. So, yeah, I mean, it will definitely be easier than, you know, study, I don't know, Chinese or something entirely different. But the languages are very, very different. Again, I will just pick up certain words, but I will not even understand complete sentences. What else will I say about Ukraine? Jewish community of Ukraine up to a year ago was about 400,000 people, at least of whom we know about. A lot of them who could try to leave over the course of the war, which in 2 weeks will be 1 year to the war. February 23rd was the first day of the war. It's unbelievable that we're already up to a year, and even further unbelievable that we don't see any light at the end of that tunnel. And also, I want to say that I said it this morning, so I'm sorry that you're hearing it in. At the very beginning, we had a lot of news about all the newspapers, all the media, all the channels and whatnot, and we were all on it, and it's not anymore. I don't know how many times a day or a week, really, you hear something from Ukraine, but actually the situation on the ground now is even worse than it was at the very beginning. And the fact that the news are no longer covering it for many different reasons. Clearly, there are other news to cover, and how long can you feed the crowds on the same topic, right? I mean, news need to make news, and that is sort of a prolonged news. But the situation on the ground now is very, very, very severe, and we just don't get the information. And there is no international communication level that will get the information. If we want to know what's going on there, we need to follow local information or through someone who has access to local information. And most of it also is not on the media or the radio. It's on social media or Telegram or WhatsApp or groups of this matter. I will just say that exit for Ukrainian men from the age of 18 to 60 is forbidden. They cannot leave the country. And it doesn't matter if they're Jewish or not Jewish, or if they hold a second passport or second nationality. By the Ukrainian law, from the age of 18 to 60, you cannot leave the country because you are a potential for draft for the army, which means that all the people that left, and the many, many, many hundred thousands of people at the beginning, and now we're already talking in several good millions that left. We're mainly talking about women, children, elderly, if they could make it. Very often they needed to walk. Remember the map at the very beginning? And I told you that nowadays it's very, very important that they share borders with many, 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 many countries. So what people did were just start walking towards any of the borders. And there were human aid organizations from all over the world. There were emissaries for Israel that were fishing the Jewish people that were coming. And we have over 65,000 Jews of Ukraine that came to Israel over the course of the last year. And I can talk about this topic for hours. I was very much involved in the very, very beginning, a little bit less of so now. But it's important to know that it's still a very, very ongoing issue, which we really don't know when there will be, where is the horizon to it be resolved. Question?
Thank you, Lana. Given the terrible anti-Semitic history that you shared about Ukraine, did the Ukrainian people know he was Jewish when they elected him? And if yes, how did that happen?
The first question.
I doubt that we could elect a Jewish president in this country.
That is for you to know and for me to find out. Yes, he never hid the fact that he was Jewish. It was very much known. I admit that I don't know enough about the local politics of Ukraine to answer the second part of the question, but he was definitely, it was public knowledge that he was Jewish, for sure. And again, personally, I'm against generalization, so I want to put out that it's complicated from many different perspectives, but of course not all people are nationalists, and at the end of the day, like in any other place in the world, there are good people and not so good people, and people that want to live in peace and harmony, and it has everything. It's complicated like any other place of the world, but at the end of the day, it's a country that was attacked by a different country and continues to be in a war zone for the recent year, and the ripple effect of that we're going to see for many, many, many years to come on so many, many different levels. It's not only people that lost their home or got a direct hit or many other things. Russia is beyond cruel in this war, beyond. And it comes on everything. in the field, they're raping women, they're abusing children. It's way over what we think or maybe think about a war or what military is supposed to do and not to do. It's just immoral on so many different levels that there's not enough words to put it in. And it's a big question mark. Where is it going? But black hole to humanity in the 21st century, and it's happening in the center of Europe, as we all know. Any other thoughts on Ukraine before we're going to move on to a different country, but we will still have the idea of Ukraine because I want to connect it to the next country. But any thoughts or questions? Okay. So one of the countries that a lot of the Ukrainian refugees escaped to is Poland. It's very, very, very close. And I'm not going to talk about Poland in 10 minutes because it's just not possible in terms of Jewish history. Poland has 1,000 years of Jewish history, 1,000 years of Jewish life. And I know that for Jews of our demographics, it's a difficult topic, but there's a lot to learn from Jewish life in Poland because really it's not only the Shoah. We're talking about 1,000 years of Jewish presence on Polish soil. And it's just an ocean of wealth and culture and music and whatnot. But I do want to connect it and maybe sort of to make us want to learn and explore more. This is the city of Krakow, which is in the southern part of Poland. By the way, Poland during World War II was destroyed to the core. To the core. If we go to Warsaw, for example, today, we can count maybe 5 buildings in the city of Warsaw that were standing there the way we see them today before 1939. Maybe 5, maybe, at most. The entire city was leveled because the entire country was leveled. The Nazis hated the Poles. And when they decided to attack it on September 1st, 1939, they absolutely erased it from the ground. That was the goal. Not only that, actually, there was no country called Poland between 1939 and 1945. It didn't exist. Why? Because before invading to Poland, Soviet Union and Nazi Germany had an agreement between themselves to divide the country among them. It was called Ribbentrop-Molotov. The two ministers of foreign affairs, 10 days before September 1st, 1939, signed a deal, looked at the map, drew the line and said, this is going to be yours, this is going to be mine. The center area will be a place where we will pack all the Jews until we'll decide what we're going to do with them. And it's actually fascinating. I grew up in an Israeli educational system, and as a product of the Israeli educational system, we learned that Holocaust equals Poland, all right? Holocaust happened in Poland. By the way, why? Because all the 6 death camps are on Polish soil. But at the same time, and I'll say this again, a country called Poland did not exist between 1939 and 1945. Half of it was Soviet, half of it was under Nazi Germany. But nevertheless, of course, they built all the death camps on Polish soil intentionally, and the story continues until this very day. There are a lot to say about local collaboration and, of course, about the pogroms in Poland after the war. Some of them are very famous. And about the revolution and about 1956. And all of that is true. But I want to talk about the Renaissance for a minute. The Renaissance of Jewish life in Poland after the fall of communism and the correction to history that Poland is doing in the recent year. The city of Krakow is the only city in the entire country that was not destroyed during the war. There's a very simple reason for that. It's a beautiful medieval city. You can look now at a little part of the main square of the medieval city. Every building that you see here is from the 1500s. It's a UNESCO recognized World Heritage Place for the architecture. A little bit behind it, towards the water, there's a beautiful river called Vistula. There's a beautiful castle, gorgeous castle built in the 1500s. The SS commander that was in charge of the entire sort of center area, it was called General Government Command, where they put all the Jews in order to figure out what to do with them, loved the architecture of the city so much that out of all the places, he chose to reign from the castle of the city of Krakow. So guess what? He moved there with his wife and 5 children to enjoy the beautiful view of the Vistula River, and by that protected the city of Krakow from destruction. I'm sure you traveled all over the world and not only with me. This is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And trust me, I also had my share of travel. Absolutely stunning and untouched, with a Jewish quarter from the 1600 that has 8 active synagogues from the 1600 throughout all the way until today. And museums. Here's another fun fact. The largest Jewish culture festival in the world is happening annually in the city of Krakow, the last 2 weeks of June. And it started in 1988. By the way, Poland was the first country from the communist bloc that pulled out and set herself free, even before the Berlin Wall and even before the collapse of the Soviet Union. They did it in 1989. And even a year before that, a Jewish culture festival was established by a non-Jew, who said, we are missing out. Not only the Jews are missing, we are missing out. Because Jewish life in Poland is our heritage. It is our culture. We want to make amends. We want to bring it back. 5 years ago or so, a spectacular museum was opened in the city of Warsaw that is called 1,000 Years of Jewish Life in Poland. It's just absolutely amazing. By the way, before COVID, led multiple trips to Poland. I never did it as a standalone. But even when we were there, I never look at Poland only through the lens of the Holocaust. It's just not right. Because, one sec, our history is very, very, very long. It's very long. And the Shoah is terrible, and it's personal, and it's touching every single one of us. But if we put it on the historic scale, it's one very particular time, and very short one also. There was 1,000 years of Jewish life on European soil and on Polish soil. By the way, Poland was the first of European countries to have Jewish community. Even the name in Hebrew would say Polin or Polania. It means God resides here. And then we had the 6 terrible, catastrophic years of the Shoah. And then we had 80 years after. And in the 80 years after, for a long period of time, it was very, very bad because it was controlled by communism, which was another erasing of identity. But in the last 30 years, there are amazing things going on. One of those amazing things is going on in the city of Krakow. And one of the amazing things in the city of Krakow is the Jewish Community Center. And the Jewish Community Center is located in Kazimierz, which is the historic Jewish quarter of the city of Krakow from the 16th century. This is where the 8 active synagogues that I mentioned. By the way, one of the first Reformed temples on European soil was established in the city of Krakow. You can see the building from the left and the inside from the right. It is no longer used as Reformed temple, but it's still called the temple. And sharing a wall with the historic Reformed temple is the Jewish Community Center. The Jewish Community Center was established close to 20 years ago, if not more. And it is absolutely amazing. There are over 1,000 local members, registered local members from the city of Krakow. There is a kindergarten for Jewish children. There is an amazing program for Holocaust survivors. There is an amazing group of non-Jewish volunteers that comes there twice or three times a week to just do stuff, whatever is needed. They are doing many, many things connected with remembering the Holocaust. Before the Ukraine war, it looked like this. This was the sign at the entrance. Welcome, or building actually. The slogan was building a Jewish future in Krakow. They were among the first ones to open up their gates when the war started. And unlike Israel, and unlike other Jewish organizations around the world, they put up a sign in the Ukrainian language with the colors of the Ukrainian flag. It says, welcome. Up until now, over 200,000 Ukrainian refugees walk through their doors. Most of them are not Jewish. Not even one of them was asked the question, are you Jewish? They're getting in. They have a room on the right-hand side with supplies that people, Polish people, bring. Hygiene kits, food, baby formula, diapers, pillows, blankets, clothes, you name it. At a certain point, there were so much supplies that they couldn't fill there that they rented up a huge warehouse. And now they put everything there as a storage, and each time they take from there and bring it to the room. They give coupons for food. They give money if somebody wants to go to the pharmacy to buy medicine. They give food. They give toys to the children, or coloring pencils, whatever. Just absolutely amazing. On any given day, this is something that we would see before the war. Right? For example, it's a program for Holocaust survivors. And nowadays it looks like this. There's a long line that goes all the way to the outside of the street of people coming in to get whatever they need. Last April, I took a group of 35 rabbis, 30 rabbis from America and 5 rabbis for Israel, with Rabbi Don Gore and Evan and many other wonderful people. We fundraised and we brought close to $1 million and 400 tons of supplies. We worked that warehouse really, really well. We were really going through all the stuff that people were bringing from all over and putting labels. Where are the socks? Where are the this? Where are the that? And we just saw with our own eyes the unbelievable work that they are doing on the ground. It is admirable. It is inspiring. And it's just a lot of pride to the Jewish community worldwide that this organization is doing what they're doing. And it's run by a wonderful Jewish guy, American, Jonathan Ornstein. By the way, I'll just say that, again, I used to guide Poland a lot before COVID. Every single day that I would take a group to Auschwitz-Birkenau, and it's closest to Krakow, so it's a day trip from Krakow. By the way, just for perspective, just a fun fact, before COVID, I'm not sure what's now. Before COVID, there were 11 million people coming to Krakow every single year. And the tourism time is only half a year because it's a very, very, very cold winter. So between April to October, 11 million people come from all over the world. 95% of them were going to Auschwitz. Most of them, of course, being non-Jews. Just from comparison, how many tourists were coming to Israel, let's say 2019, which was the peak season of tourism since the beginning of Israel? And it's a year-round 4.5 million, right? Just so every single time I would go for a day, it's a day trip to Auschwitz-Birkenau, I will come back to Krakow and we'll have dinner at the Jewish Community Center. And it just fills you up with light, with life, with hope. When I was in Poland last April, there were a lot of refugees. But I did not feel for a minute that I'm in a city of refugees. There were no tents, there were no huts, they were taken care of. And I did not see any country of the world doing what Poland was doing. The refugees that would come in will receive an ID number, so the parents could go to work, just like the locals, and that they could register their children to kindergartens and schools, just like the locals, in a most decent and accepting way. So I was absolutely amazed, and I truly think that they are doing a correction to history, not only for themselves as a country, but for the entire world. Really a correction to history, a country that went through what they went through, and nowadays are just doing a repair.
Yeah, in support of what you're saying, Brooke and I were very fortunate. About 6-7 years ago, we visited Krakow and Warsaw, and we met, I think it's the same gentleman from New York.
Yeah, Jonathan.
Yeah, so there was a group of 19 of us on a mission, and what was very interesting, he sat us around in a circle, I'll never forget this, and he said, what is your Jewish Community Center in Los Angeles, what is the difference between yours and ours here in Krakow? And the answer was, you have a basketball court and you don't. And it was very, very, very succinct. It was a very interesting comment. The second thing is the Jewish Community Center there are so many people that are now discovering they're Jewish. And this particular facility is working so hard to work through that. And what we saw were young families, young kids getting married, and they were finding out that both young adults actually came from Jewish heritage. During the war, they went to Catholic families. I think Poland's still 95% Catholic.
Yeah.
But they are really working very hard. The Jewish Community Center is fabulous. I mean, it's fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, there are really crazy stories about how people find out about them being Jewish. We'll save it from when we go there. And of course, this is just one example of Krakow. I can tell a very, very similar story about Warsaw and about other places as well. It's just amazing. It's truly amazing to see a whole country that is changing itself. And of course, the renaissance of the Jewish community. I wrote my master's thesis about the renaissance of the Jewish community of Poland, so it's a topic that is very near and dear to me. But after not being there for several years because of COVID, and then being there last April sort of in a completely different context, and to see what I saw, it's just inspiring. And I think we can learn a lot from what they're doing over there. We're gonna leave Poland. It was a very, very short visit. Anybody wants to maybe say or ask or comment, or because we're moving on to something entirely different on a completely other place of the planet and does not share a border, not with Ukraine, not with Poland, not even with Europe. Dun, da, da. Okay, so I must be very honest. India was never under my radar. By the way, I am not the typical Israeli that, after the army in Israel, it's a thing. We finish the army and then we go back to live with our parents after we left at the age of 18, at 21, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. We go back to live with our parents because we have no money. And then we work in all kind of crappy jobs because we want to go on the big trip around the world to find ourselves. And that's what most people do between 6 months to a year, either to South America or to India. And it takes a very, very long time. For some people, a little bit longer than 6 months. So India is one of the top destinations. At any given point, there are 50,000 Israelis in India. It really is an enterprise. There are more people speaking Hebrew there than... So I did not take a trip after the army. There were all kinds of different reasons for that. But even if I would definitely go to South America. There was not a question there. India never attracted me whatsoever. And I don't think I would ever go there by myself. And then last December, I was invited to join on a JDC and Wine trip, Jewish Distribution Committee, one of the largest Jewish organizations in the world. They are doing incredible work with Jewish communities really all over the world. And they have a program for young people that are basically bringing young people to meet all these other young Jewish people around the world. So it was a free trip, and I thought, okay, sounds cool. I would never go by myself. What can be wrong, right? And I fell in love. I had no idea that India is India. And in the few minutes that we have, I want to share a little bit of that with you. First of all, it's a gigantic country, so clearly we're not talking about India. It's just really to get a flavor. The colors, the smells, the sounds, the people, the food that I did not eat because I don't eat spicy, but most of people think it's one of the best foods on the planet. But everything is just on such a scale of vitality that is just amazing. If we'll put it on a scale of 0 to 10, then it's 10 plus. But it's all the time 10 plus on everything. There are multiple people and multiple colors, and everything's just happening all the time. And of course, it also can be seen in Jewish life. So first of all, I want to say that the Jewish community of India is one of the most ancient Jewish communities outside of the land of Israel that have been there continuously throughout for over 2,000 years. And that is amazing. Those of you who traveled with me to Italy, we said a very, very similar sentence there. The Greek Jews are saying something very, very similar. And I think the Iraqi Jews can claim something very, very similar, but also the Indian Jews. And it's not only one group. We have several Jewish groups, but the core are there from, some actually say that they are there from the times of King Solomon, which is 3,000 years ago, which is possible to believe because he was doing a lot of trade. And India, on the Silk Road, I mean, it's possible, not in big numbers probably, but possible. But most of them are there for the last 2,200 years or so, and they're there throughout. They are very, very proud, saying that they have never experienced anti-Semitism or anything like that. And they were living there peacefully and wonderfully until 1948, which is when most of them decided to live on their own, not because somebody pushed them out. And a lot of the Indian Jews made Aliyah to Israel, especially from Cochin. We have certain cities in Israel that are known to be Cochini Jews, but still a little bit remained. Okay. So this is one of the synagogues in Cochin. Cochin used to have up till 20,000 Jews from before the establishment of the State of Israel. Today there are maybe 20, but very committed 20, making sure that the synagogues have the lights on and not only the lights. A street sign, very similar to what we saw from Odessa, if you remember, right? It says only the language is different, but the idea is the same. It's called Jewtown Road. And again, it's not an insult. It's just the way it is. It's the street of the Jews that leads to the Jewish quarter. So it is known for everybody. And even today, when there are 20 Jews combined in all of Kerala, which is the state where Cochin is, the entire area is called Jewtown. And they are very, very fond of it and loving it. So just to look at the map a little bit, it's one of the largest countries in the whole world, right? I mean, this is really difficult to grasp, but you can see the color purple is where most of the Jewish communities are located. There's a little bit more sort of north on the coast in Delhi, but most of them are in Mumbai, which is kind of a little bit south of the center, and then in Cochin, which is in Kerala in the very, very, very south, and then there's a little bit to the east in West Bengal. Heaven on earth. It's not the beaches. I did not get there. It's not Goa. Most of Israelis go to Goa, and they say that it's really paradise. I haven't been there, but this is just a taste of Cochin. It's very, very lush, very, very green. A lot of farming, fishing, beautiful. Comparatively to Mumbai, very, very small, sort of fishing nets, very, very traditional. For example, they have this traditional theater. I call it an Indian drag show. It was really something. Again, the Jewtown Road. A little bit, again, of the feel of the synagogues. The colors are just unbelievable. The structure or the interior of the synagogues in Kuchim have very, very particular structure. The bima is in the center, sort of like in Sephardic synagogues. And then the ark, of course, pointing towards Jerusalem, and people are sitting around. And then there's a second floor for the women, and the second floor also has a bima. And when they take the Torah out of the ark, one Torah goes down to the center to the men, and one Torah goes up to the women. And I heard many, many stories of people that said that the women, throughout ages, from the 1600s and on, knew how to read Torah. And when boys were getting bar mitzvahs, then who was teaching them how to read? The mothers and the grandmothers. A very, very famous synagogue, which is at the end of that Jew road called Paradisi. Just a little bit, again, a flavor of how the people look like. I thought it's the most beautiful people I've ever met, and the most beautiful clothing. Just to have a little taste. Let's see if it will work.
It triggered a migration of Jews from Kerala back to their ancient homeland. Thus, from the 1950s onwards, members of a community that had assimilated itself into the social and cultural life of Kerala began their journey to the Promised Land, a dream they had nurtured through generations. This adoptive land, however, has preserved the relics of their history for the sake of those Jews who come back in search of their roots, and also for historians as well as travelers. Even today, the Jewish street, the synagogues, and the museums stand bathed in their past glory and wait patiently for their visits. Some believe that the Jews came to Kerala during the time of King Solomon, that is, even before the time of Jesus Christ. Others argue that they came to Kodunallur in Kerala in 70 CE after the Temple of Jerusalem was destroyed. Whatever that may be, the fact is they lived in this land for centuries. While the new generation has returned to the native soil, their forebears, like Sarah Cohen, who held Kerala close to their hearts, lived and died here. The first sites that greet those who come in search of Jewish history in Kerala are the Jewish street in Mattancherry and the Mattancherry synagogue, known locally as the Pardeshi synagogue. The areas where the Jews settled down were known as the Jew street and the Jew town. The synagogue, which has now been converted into a museum, and the street are preserved as heritage structures. They open the doors to the history of those times when they were vibrant spaces.
All right, just to see a little bit of the colors. I'm not going to put it on. I'll just say that this gentleman, whose name is Elijah, put up his entire life to keeping one particular synagogue alive. And they're just absolutely amazing. It looks like this. It looks like this. It's just absolutely gorgeous. They have a parochet. You know what's a parochet? It's the fabric that is very often cover the ark. And very often you will embroider on it, you will dedicate it in the name of someone who is deceased. Or in Kuchin, they used to have a beautiful tradition. So women that will get married, they will have these beautiful dresses. And then what do you do with that after the ceremony is over, usually? Well, we don't really know what to do with it, right? So what they used to do with it is to donate it and to make a parochet, a cover for the ark from a wedding gown. And then to dedicate it to someone from the family who is deceased. So this synagogue has about 10 of them. You can see that they're hanged on the ceiling, and they're of different colors. And each of them comes down on a certain Jewish holiday, and he changes them on the ark according to the holiday. It's like a whole thing. And now they used to do it for centuries. Now there's no one there, and he still does it. And he literally, his entire family left. It was really something. We were there on a certain Sunday morning or something like that, and we were davening shacharit and singing, and really it was amazing sort of to bring the spirit of this sanctuary alive. And next to us was a picture in black and white of this particular sanctuary filled with people from 1948. And all of them made Aliyah to Israel, including his children. And he is there sort of keeping it alive. One of the most amazing things was that he was telling us the story of the synagogue, and then suddenly he was like, I want to sing something to you. And he was standing next to the ark, and suddenly he started singing a melody that sounded very, very familiar to me, and within a few seconds I recognized that it's a very famous Baghdadi song that I know from Israel, because there are a lot of Jews came from Iraq to Israel. So he is from a descent of Jews that came from Iraq. And he continues this tradition until this very day. If you'll have the energy, Cantor Dagan, I will sing it at the end of this, which is coming up in a few minutes. Mumbai. Mumbai is a completely different story. It's a flight or a very, very long drive. Mumbai is a city of 25 million people, and it felt immediately. You walk on the streets, you don't see the sidewalk. You only see people. You drive on the road, you don't see the road. You don't see the markation, nothing. You just see cars and cars and cars and cars and cars. And I'm sure that I know what you're thinking about driving in Israel. So just imagine the Israeli road only in a city of 25 million people, but they're going like this. Nobody honking. Nobody's yelling. And there are no accidents. It's just unbelievable. They have this unspoken language between them, and it works. I was sitting in the front of the bus on long bus drives, and what I saw was in my own eyes. I was like, if this was Israel, there would be 25 accidents on this one corner. And everybody will go out of the vehicles, yell, punch. There will be a traffic 2 miles long in each of the directions. None of that. None. They're just going. And it feels like the motto is live and let live. Just go straight, stay in your direction, and don't interrupt anybody. And most importantly, don't stop. Which is an amazing motto for life. Just go, just do, just don't stop. A girlfriend of mine and I were waking up at 5 o'clock every single morning to gain a couple more hours every single day. No need to make fun of me. I can brook. And we were walking to markets. So just imagine that you arrive at a fish market or flower market or fruit and vegetable market at 6 o'clock in the morning, and for them it's like the middle of the day. There are 100,000 people there already, and everybody are just walking. If anybody remember an experience walking through the Machane Yehuda market in Jerusalem? Everybody pushing, elbowing, yelling, cursing, nothing. Everybody are quiet. Everybody are doing their own thing. Just literally stay in your path, walk, don't interrupt anybody, and most importantly, don't stop. And that's how it's working out in a city of 25 million people. Here you can see the Gate of India that I started with. In front of it is a gigantic hotel. By the way, if you remember the terror attack several years ago, that was a combined attack at a Chabad house, and I'm blinking now on the name of this hotel, but this is the famous hotel. And ever since the Chabad get to light Hanukkah candles in front of it, everything happens for a reason. Here's a little bit closer. It truly is an amazing city. And it's so diverse that you don't understand where you're at. Sometimes I walk the street and I felt like I'm in Europe, like a capital in Europe somewhere of the 19th century in terms of architecture and design. And some other times, if you look on the right, this is a train station. Have you seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire? This is the train station on the right, where it was taken. By the way, it gets a whole other meaning after you actually see it with your own eyes and then watch the movie again. Also, by the way, train station that commutes millions of people on a daily basis, millions of people on a daily basis, and it's fine. It just works as long as you don't stop. Keep on moving. That's the motto. But then, of course, it's also a city of contrasts. Big, big, gigantic, unbearable in mind contrast. You have people that are super, super rich, and you see these huge houses, and you hear the stories that they have servants, and they have this, and they have that. And then on the other hand, you have thousands of people that are living on the street. This is a contrast that personally, and I'm sure not only personally for me, is very, very hard to reconcile. How is it possible in one city that those people that are living in these mansions are okay to have people in their own city you see children and babies, and it just really, the slums are everywhere. You don't need to drive too far. You leave your hotel and you are in an area where you don't understand how people live. Nobody looks sad. Nobody. They have this belief of this life and afterlife and many different traditions, and idol worshiping as part of this whole business, that I am exactly where I need to be, and this really deep belief that everybody lived the life that they should live, and it seems sort of that everybody are in an agreement of that. It's really mind-boggling. There is some serenity in the air of sort of the atmosphere of the energy. Yeah, this is right from above, and of course, right, it speaks for itself. I mean, you can see the contrast, and it's constantly built and built more and more and more and more. It can be any European modern city, right, anywhere in the world. Over 14 synagogues in the city of Mumbai, a community of over several, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people, very, very proud in their Judaism. 2 different groups, or even 2.5 different groups of Jews. We have the ancient Jews. They call themselves the original Jews, of course, those who came there first, somewhere between King Solomon and 2nd century BC. And then they have the Baghdadi, the Iraqi Jews that joined them in the 6th century. Those who were in Italy, if you remember, in Rome, we were talking about the Roman Jews that are also the original Jews, and then the Libyan Jews that joined them. So I felt it's a little bit like that. Beautiful synagogues. A little bit from the inside. And it's just truly incredible being so far in the world and to feel unity when you step into a synagogue and you're home. You open up a prayer book and you're home. You're meeting a Jewish community center in Mumbai and you're home. You're going to an old age home held by the JDC and you're home. You're meeting young people. There's a youth movement for young people, Jewish young people, and you're home. And it's just truly incredible. Look how beautiful from the inside. A few different synagogues. There are many. There's a Jewish school. There's I see that. Just to hear the voices a little bit.
Is written in our Bible.
The 14 synagogues, of course, are Orthodox. But there is a Reform congregation in Mumbai. And they even have an Israeli rabbi that is coming there for the last 10 years on high holidays. And they're very, very excited. They're now building a new building for the Reform community. Truly amazing. This is an old age home, and this is just a story that I want to share, and we'll end with that. An old age home just outside of Mumbai, held by the JDC. Before COVID, it used to have 12 elderly people there from the Jewish community. They're alone, they don't have family, so that's why they're there. And it's bittersweet and tragic. During COVID, they lost 8 of the residents due to COVID. And now there are 4 remaining. I was in a group of maybe 20 people, something like that. There were 4 of them. So when we got there, we split up to sort of different areas of the house. And we sat in a circle with one of them, just asking questions about their lives and just trying to be with them at where they're at and also grasp a little bit of their wisdom. So I was fortunate to be in a circle with Sophie, who is 87 years old. It was just the most charming woman ever. And at the end, I asked her if there's maybe a Jewish song that she would like us to sing for her. So she didn't speak any Hebrew, and actually she didn't speak English, so she spoke Marathi, and somebody translated for us. And when I asked her about the song, then I could see that she's like, closed her eyes, and she was like thinking. And then suddenly she opened up her eyes like this, and she says, Dror Yikara. And that's a prayer that is very common to say specifically in the Sephardi traditions. Have many words and many melodies, sort of like a Don Olam. So on the left is Joshua, who was our local tour guide. So I came to him, and he is from the community of Mumbai, and I asked him, which melodies do you know for Dror Yikra? Because Sophie wants us to sing Dror Yikra. So he had a few ideas, and then he went to her, and he sang a few of the melodies to choose the one that she will know. And then we had the most magical moment. We all gathered our entire group and all the 4 elderly that were living there. And we sat in sort of, they have like a living room type thing. We sat in a circle. Now, Dror Yikra has many words in Hebrew. It's long. So I looked it up on my phone, and I took a picture of it, and I sent it on the WhatsApp group for all the group participants so we can sing it and read the words. So all of us, the young people, were holding our phones in our hands to follow along the words that we don't know by heart. And this 87-year-old charming Sophie sat in the center of the room with her nightgown, and it was as if we took her down the memory lane. You could see in her face that something happened to her. I don't know where we took her with this song, but she was completely eliminated. And she sang the entire song from the very beginning to the very end by heart in Hebrew. As we were holding up our phones and trying to follow along. And then in the middle, Joshua, who was leading the melody, remembered that he doesn't wear a kippah. So he, like often Jewish men do, on certain circumstances, put a hand in his pocket and took out a kippah and put it on his head, and then she made fun of him that he remembered that he doesn't have a kippah, not that we were in the sanctuary or anything, so she made fun of him, and she took a handkerchief and she put it on her head. It was really just the sweetest moment. But the main thing about it was that this was Jewish peoplehood moment. It was a Jewish family moment. We were students and rabbis from America, from Israel. We had some local young people from the Jewish Indian community with us, and we traveled literally to the other side of the world to meet this precious human being called Sophie, who is 87 years old. And we were sitting next to her and singing a song that she remembered and carried through her entire life from childhood in a perfect Hebrew language. It was just... Here all of us are singing. And I will just finish up with this. In every place, there are inspiring moments. And one of the most inspiring moments came on the last day of my trip over there. I really love this sign. And I think that it's something that I really want to bring back with me everywhere I go. So if you can dream it, you can do it. And the story behind it is of a man, a Jewish man, who made Aliyah from Australia to Israel and lived 30 years in Israel, working as a very successful businessman in a tech company. And one day, 12 years ago, his tech company sent him to Mumbai on a work trip. So in the morning he was working, and in the afternoon he had some free time. He was walking around the streets, and he saw what you see when you walk around the streets of Mumbai. And he was completely heartbroken and disturbed when we saw the number of children and the babies and all other horrific things that he saw on the streets. came back to Israel from work and felt like he cannot continue life the way he did, that something needs to be done. To make a long story short, after a few days, he quit his job and he started by himself with 10 fingers an NGO that is called Gabriel Project of Mumbai. He is working in the slums and in the villages area at the outskirts of Mumbai, doing a number of very different things. By the way, you can see him on the right. He is bringing up a system that is purifying water. Cantor is saying me that I need to stop talking. Half a minute. I cannot concentrate like this.
I'm giving you background music.
Right. So he's bringing up a system to purify water. Opened up clinics, health clinics that people can come in and get health care. Open up a school for children that were walking on the streets, giving them a hot meal and educating them, teaching them the importance of brushing their teeth and washing hands with soap. Open up a place that women can do embroidery and all kind of different crafts for their vitality and livelihood. He currently has 90 people, local staff on the ground in Mumbai. And it's just absolutely incredible. One person that had a dream and said, if you can dream it, you can do it. And today it's one of the most influential NGOs working in one of the most troublesome slum areas, bringing hope, bringing future, and bringing inspiration to themselves and to everyone that visit. So it was just a small flavor. For all those who are thinking that maybe they want to find out more about this part of the world. We're playing it, we're singing it, what are we doing?
Whatever you want. I'm just giving a little flavor.
Today, very small. Maybe, even Mumbai about 3,000, in other places maybe 5,000 altogether. But the history is what? We will see? All right, yalla. I need words.
You need words?
Yes, because I'm not Sophie.
Okay.
That's the Baghdadi melody that the guy was singing in the synagogue. And in Israel today, it's becoming more and more famous. You can join in La La La. מנבו עלי, הרים רגלי, מבשר שלום, בבניין עירך. מנבו עלי, הרים רגלי, מבשר שלום, בבניין עירך. כל צופייך יישאו כל רינה, התנערי מתוך מגינה. שכינה ושבו בנייך לגמולך סינג לה 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 מה נבוא עלי לה 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 By the way, one of the most beautiful things that I learned on Shabbat, how they do Shabbat Shalom. So they, right, services and all, prayer, and then if you want to come and say Shabbat Shalom to somebody, so you'll come to them, you'll do hands like the cat. They will do like this. Second hand, like this. Yes, okay. So they will go, they will look at each other, they'll say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Kacha. And then they'll just go around everybody and then we'll say Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Isn't it beautiful? What? Well, that I need to demonstrate. I need to work on that.
Rabbi Lana. Thank you for opening up a whole another part of the world, multiple parts of the world, and placing some ideas of perhaps some future trips of where we can go, planting those seeds for the future. So beautiful. You have one more chance to learn with Lana, Torah study Saturday, Shabbat morning at 8:30. We'll be here. Come as you are. If you're coming from the gym or going to the gym, be in your sweats. If you're going for a hike afterwards, be in your shorts. Don't dress up for me because I won't be dressed up for you. But we will be here and we will study and we learn. Thank you to Laurie and her crew. Who else was on the crew? Brooke and Shelly and who else? Bonnie and everybody else for making this happen. Shelly for being here. We'll be back. Welcome to Peter Fisher, our newest congregant as of this morning, I think. We're thrilled you're here. Piece of sad news. We got word while we're here that Rich Abrams, his sister, passed away today. Don't know when the funeral is, but my guess is it's going to be on. Actually, I don't know. Live Control, thank you very much. I'm going to have you sign off now, and we'll get the word out once we know.